Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wisdom Seeker Live, second episode for this week. I wanted to take a time to share about fear prison and talked about this on Monday morning, and also wanted to be able to share opportunity to join me with live with some folks maybe from other time zones that would not normally get to join us. And so I hope that is going to work and appreciate everyone being here. And I wanted to give a couple of ground rules, if you would, because of the potential uh, controversial or challenging nature of the what I'm going to be talking about tonight. First of all, I made it clear that we're going to have a session. I welcome comments and questions and engagement without any doubt. Really enjoy that. Makes a big difference, makes for a better podcast. But one thing that I won't allow, just like I don't allow them on my posts, is name calling and getting mean or harsh to other people. And so I will just simply not allow it. I will delete, block, whatever I need to. Hopefully, not necessary. The time when I did this on Monday morning, we had a great time, good interaction, and no problems. So I hope that's the way it goes this time. Also, another disclaimer is I'm not here to make a statement for or against masks or mandates or vaccines or things like that. Not at all what I'm about this evening. Welcome, Hiram. Glad to have you, brother. And what I am wanting to do is to help provide some thoughts, insights into how you can avoid getting into and caught up in the fear that is currently going on in and around us. And I'm going to get focused on a particular area. I've talked on fear before, but never gone into the targeted notion that I'm going to. And it's related to the news media and how it is treating the current pandemic information. And it is driving a great deal of fear. And so, what I want to do is just talk through some of this and arm you with ways not to be fearful, but to approach this with wisdom. And as we always talk about for us on the Wisdom Seeker podcast, that wisdom is about a journey, and the journey starts with knowledge. So I'm going to share some knowledge with everyone tonight. I'm going to, if I share opinion, I'm going to make it clear it's opinion. Otherwise, I'm going to just share information and help folks bring this into perspective. I have had comments that in doing some of this that I am trying to spin things, and I assure you, not my intent at all. We have enough spin going on right now. What my goal is in all of this is just to help you be informed and how to overcome the fear that's being put out in front of us, around us, and about us, just by helping you with, again, just some good information and some perspective. And the wisdom journey, I always like to share at the beginning of each show that our wisdom journey starts with knowledge. But if it ends there, you got a problem, because knowledge without wisdom usually leads to arrogance and a swelled head and some other issues. So, good first step, important. Unlike what is said by people at times, this is not knowledge is not power, because there is knowledge all around us, and we can have all the knowledge in the world we want, but if we can't use it and apply it, then there's no power to it at all, other than being a step towards wisdom. Second step in this journey is understanding, and that's usually gained through experience of taking knowledge that we have acquired and begin to use it, apply it, and try to make sense of it, make application of it. And that's a great part. Many people do that. The problem is that a great deal of people forget to take the last step. Good evening or good morning, Rosemary. Glad to see you. It's been a long time. Appreciate you being here. Rosemary was a long time attendee in my morning podcast, but with time changes, it just got to be unable for Rosemary to keep with us. So I'm so glad to see you. Okay, Lee. Let me finish up with what wisdom is. Last step in the process is seeing things from a bigger picture. Okay. We've got to move beyond just our own experience and what goes on immediately around us in terms of perspective. And so when we take our knowledge and our understanding and take it to the level of where we begin to see our knowledge and understanding and apply it outside of ourselves, where our focus isn't just on what will it do for me or what will happen to me, we begin to consider what will it do to others, how will it affect others, and start weighing that into it. And for those of us that are of a spiritual bent, the way we quite often look at it as seeing the world through God's eyes. And that's where wisdom really is found, is in seeing that bigger picture of what's going on. And just such a key component. And the beauty of gaining wisdom and moving into that area, I believe, is along with the wisdom, we begin to get discernment. And some people call it gut and instinct, but whatever you want to call it, it's an important piece. And I would even say that it is why the lack of seeking wisdom is why we also have unfortunately, a true statement that common sense isn't so common anymore. So, anyway, we just need to grow in wisdom. We need to seek wisdom. We can stumble into it. Many people have, but the idea is to indeed seek it out and gain it according to wisdom much greater than my own, coming especially out of the Bible, is that wisdom's greater than gold, greater than gems, greater than silver. And I think modern interpretation would be greater than money and wealth. So welcome, Ed Mario. Glad to have you. And you're very welcome for the invite. So we're talking about the wisdom journey. And so this evening, what I really want us to think about is overcoming the fear that is just being pushed at us all the time. And part of the key here is something that I started with a challenge when I first started the Wisdom Seeker podcast. Welcome, Dr. Jesmond. Always good to hear from you. Is that the challenge is that we have to start disconnecting, okay? And especially now, and especially I have talked about disconnecting from the noise and left it generic, but I have to say at this point that one of the biggest noises that we need to disconnect from is the news media, because there is so much incomplete information, misinformation, and just like I mentioned earlier, the spin. And so we just need to learn how to overcome that. Welcome, Aaron. You had a beautiful concert. Thanks for the invite. I appreciate that. So anyway, disconnect from the news, the noise, then stop and uh, begin to observe. And part of the observation is seeking out information for yourself. And as you do that, you begin to get a better perspective of what's truly going on around us and in the world and inside of us. Part of it is we've got to observe inwardly. And then the last part is whatever we observe is to take and seek wisdom in regards to it. And so that's the challenge that I put out there. And so I want to give you tools that will help you, excuse me, my nose is itching, will help you begin to be more comfortable in disconnecting, because I know some people are concerned that if they don't watch news, read newspapers, listen to news radio and things like that, that they'll be uninformed and that they will not know what's going on. And so want you to consider there are other ways to be very well informed and to consider what's happening, but not be overrun by it. And one of the things as we move forward in this process is to consider what my business partner and I, Anton, created it's called a bucket exercise, and it involves three buckets. And the three buckets are what I can control, what I can influence, and the rest. And so part of the problem we're encountering now is we're inundated with a lot of noise / news that's stuff that we can't control, that we can't influence, and yet it's in our face all the time. So I'm truly trying to encourage people to remove yourself from that and begin to get away from it. In fact, it's been very interesting because I started this process of disconnecting probably about 3 years ago. By one of the things that my family and I chose to do is we watch very little, if any, live TV at all. We're getting to watch less and less TV, period. Certainly not news programs. And what I find is that I am a lot more calm, a lot more at ease, more contented by doing so. And yet I'm not ill-informed, and hopefully I'm going to share some things, ways that you can remain informed yourself. And so let's see, before I get too far into things, want to look at a couple of comments here. I had to chuckle earlier. Lee suggested when I talked about knowledge without wisdom, his comment, isn't that Washington? Tons of knowledge, lawyers, but very little wisdom. Unfortunately, I think it might be. And so just something to consider. And let's see. Okay. Ed Mario makes a comment. Okay. You're sharing about creator mode on LinkedIn. I appreciate that. And that's a good tool. Oh, welcome, Kuldeep. I hope I haven't mispronounced your name. We're glad to have you with us this evening. And so again, feel free to make comments, questions as I go along. I'm okay with even disagreeing. People want to disagree as long as we do it agreeably. So we've talked about disconnecting and beginning to observe and taking more control of what we're exposed to. And I found some very insightful information. But I want to share with you how to get some perspective and share some of the details on that. Rosemary makes a comment. I I rarely turn the TV on. I read a few select newspapers and I listen to select radio. The rest holds no interest to me. I will always help where I can and support what needs my support, but I'm very select in what I involve myself with. A lot of wisdom there, Rosemary, because we get ourselves involved in things that maybe we shouldn't because we've exposed ourselves to things that maybe we shouldn't. So what I want to do is I want to share my screen because I want to give you some information and so that you can find perspective. One of the tools that I have found is called Worldometer. And I don't know everything about Worldometer, but it is a great tool to get information, and it provides a lot of data. And I'm going to direct you at two of the pages there. I think there's other for you to look at. But one of the things that I like to do is to look at data based in context. Because outside of context, numbers really don't mean as much as they should. And I'll give the example of my own personal life. Back when I was first married and started having children, the idea of spending $10 was at times quite significant. And as a result, when I thought about spending $10, my reaction was pretty strong. And I fast forward to now, and just for the record, I am not a rich man. I'm rich in blessings, but not a rich man financially. But at this point in my life, the idea of spending $10 has a whole different perspective because of the context of where I am at. And as a result of having that context, it causes me to think differently. And that is true of so much. We could do a whole topic on looking at context. And so part of the context as we look at the information we're dealing with, by the way, welcome, Benjamin. Glad to have you with us on the podcast. But when we start looking at numbers and the way that they are presented to us right now in the news is they are presented without context. If you notice that a lot of what is presented in the news is about increases in numbers, and it can make a big difference, though, to understand the context of those numbers. Welcome, Taylor. Glad to have you with us. So part of what I like to do in the case of dealing with the pandemic is to give context to the numbers, the information that we're given. Now, I know that some would say that right now the numbers are dubious. Don't know. Some point we have to take in some information and work from it. And so what I am doing is Worldometer is, again, this page is population. So you can readily get world population. You can get population by country, population by year, and so on. A lot of good data there to reference. Okay. Taylor, I appreciate your question about cryptocurrency. I know some about it, far from being an expert. I will keep you in mind. So as we're looking at this, we've got the information about population here. And let me go to, I believe it's this link, which is rather interesting because on this page you can see births and deaths and growth and all that. And then if you scroll down further, and this is Worldometer, worldometer.com. And what I found is this is the population information. But if you keep looking on Worldometer, there is a great deal of information in regards to deaths, related to health and so forth. I'm not on the right page for that. I had it earlier, but that's one page. The other page that I like to, and you can get to it by clicking up here. You'll see coronavirus. And if you click on that, it brings you to an advertisement, apparently. But okay, it gives you information on coronavirus and includes cases, deaths, recoveries, and so on, and lots of charts and good information. So you can be very well informed without getting other people's opinions. In fact, one of the things that I want to comment is that even what I'm telling you, don't accept at face value. Check it out for yourself. Really explore it and verify it. So here is information related to the coronavirus, and it's broken down by world, and it's broken down by country. And then if you click on the country, it brings up individual states, provinces, and the like. And so it's a great tool to go through. And it even helps you. For example, I find it helpful information is they give us active cases, serious to critical cases, and total cases by million of population. So what I am suggesting and offering as some way to stay informed, but also keep it in perspective, is as you look at numbers. For example, right now is a lot of talk about the coronavirus has had 5 million deaths as a result as of today, 5,348,977. And you look at that number, and with when you look at that number, it's kind of staggering. It's a big number. But when you take that number and you look at a world population of 7 billion people, the actual percentage of the population that has died from coronavirus, and bear in mind, I'm not trying to minimize death of any kind. I would never do that, never be that insensitive. But the fact is, we face death on a regular basis. And what we have to consider is the risk involved in those choices related to things and death. But when you take the total number of deaths and you divide it into the population, that number comes out at I believe it's 0.0075%. Okay, not 1%, not 1/10 of 1%, but the very, very small. Okay, is that to say that we should be cavalier in regards to the deaths occurring from coronavirus? No, we shouldn't be cavalier about deaths caused by anything. And so we just need to get in there and look at the information. The other piece of information that I have found, and I'm going to show you some data, some of the math that I did just today. But the other thing that we look at and we talk about is we get caught up in the number of cases right now active in coronavirus. And right now, as of today, it's 22,259,491. Big number, really big number. But when you take that number and you divide it into, again, the population number, it comes out to less than it's less than, that one calculates, I believe, less than 2% of the population currently has an active case of coronavirus. And so when you start thinking of that, it makes more sense, especially when I look just around my world, where I live, where I work, who I interact with, I don't see a large number of people that are actively infected with COVID. And so it brings it into a different perspective. So what I'm trying to encourage you to do is to just get information and don't rely on others' interpretation of that information. And again, just going to Worldometer and doing some simple math and looking at things in context brings a whole nother perspective of what's going on. And that whole other perspective causes us to be less fearful. And keeping it in context helps us to be less fearful. And if I could find it, let me see if I can find this information. Earlier today on Worldometer, I found a ticker that was going. Let me see if I need to scroll down further. But the ticker was rather interesting. And the health news or health data was what struck me as I happened to observe this ticker. And I'm probably not going to find it. My apologies, because it's real informational in that in looking at it, we talk about 5 million deaths from coronavirus. One of the numbers that struck me is vehicle accident deaths currently was over 1 million people. And communicable disease deaths was like 20 million. And so there are a number of data out there. When you start looking at the data, then it gives you a different perspective. And Ed Mario, I will look at your questions if we have time, because I kind of want to stay on topic. Appreciate you asking them, but my hope is that we can kind of focus in and stay on this topic for now. Might be something that we consider for another Wisdom Seeker podcast if I don't get to it tonight. So thanks for hanging in there with me, and I appreciate it. So be informed, but don't be informed by other people's interpretation of information. And what we are getting bombarded with in the media currently is people's perspective. They are not giving us complete information. And therefore, when we start seeing numbers like 5 million deaths from coronavirus, and we don't look at it in the context of 7 billion people in the world, or we don't look at it in the context of the other causes of death that we have been dealing with for decades. And those fears have not, that information, that knowledge has not driven us to live in the state of fear that we are currently in. And by the way, something that is important to understand is that we are not designed, created, made, whatever term you want to use, to live in fear. It is not healthy. My business partner, Anton, can give you the physiologic aspects of it and how that living in fear can destroy our mental and emotional and physical health, because we just aren't designed to live with that. So stay informed, get data. If you can find something other than Worldometer, that's fine. Just try to validate it as much as you can, and so on. So shifting gears a little bit, one of the things that I have observed is the number of people that see this virus, the coronavirus, as being pervasive or being everywhere or ubiquitous, whatever word you like. And we see evidence of that. For example, I watch people driving in their cars by themselves wearing masks. And I did hear an explanation of why that might be otherwise, but I don't think this is the case. The explanation was so you didn't forget to have it when you needed it. But I believe it's because my opinion, I told you I'd let you know when my opinion, and my opinion is that it is the result of people thinking that the coronavirus is all around us, that it's there constantly, and that we're in fear of contracting it. By the way, if you do the numbers and if you go on Worldometer, you can get some historic data and compare. But based on the numbers that I have done the math on, the death rate of this virus has gone down. The infection rate has gone a little bit up, but the effects of it, serious effects of it, has begun to wane as well. So just, again, check it out, be informed. So the other thing that I really hope to help folks understand is that I want to talk to you a little bit about contracting viruses and bacteria. I am medically trained, and so I'm not a doctor. I am an emergency medical responder, nationally certified, and and so I understand especially this concept that I'm going to talk about, because it's been part of medical training and doctrine for decades. And this is, by the way, on the CDC website. So theoretically, that's reliable information. And Lee makes a comment. He says that he saw a guy once in a car wearing a mask too, and this fool was driving a convertible with the top down. Yeah, I understand that people are making choices, but I also understand part of the reason they're doing that is the influence that's being pressured onto us through news media. And it is just causing so much challenge. And Rosemary makes comments. Truthfully, I'm more concerned with the number of children who are illiterate and enumerate when they when they leave school than I am about COVID-19. And I understand that completely, Rosemary. When you look at types of death that occur, it's pretty interesting. Percentages, probability. In fact, if you look up the probability of getting infected with the COVID virus versus other ways of dying, it's pretty amazing. So what I want to share a little bit about, I'm going to make this a little bigger. I just realized that it is pretty small. It's called the chain of infection. And when I encourage you all to go to the CDC website and look at the section 10 of their training. This is what is used for doctors and medical people all over, and it's called the chain of infection. And the big picture concept, chain of infection, is if you take any link out of the chain, you will not become infected. And it's been a it's considered medical fact that this is true. And it's true whether we're speaking of bacteria or viral infection. And what you need to understand is that the idea is that there are reservoirs that carry the infection. And in this case, primarily it's human. I have heard information that there may be some animal reservoirs for the infection out there. And the next thing you need to understand, and this is critical, is portal of exit. And that is, how does the virus or bacteria leave the all of a sudden I'm drawing blank, the reservoir, and get to other people to infect them. And it's called modes of transmission. And there's direct, and that means somebody physically touching, sharing the biological material that carries the virus or bacteria. And the other direct, and part of the same concept, is somebody is close enough to you that they can sneeze on you and transmit biological material that has the virus in it. Then you have the potential to get infected. Let's see, Ed Mario. Okay. Good comment related to what we're talking about, Ed Mario, is that he talks about the current pandemic and not only the medical and epidemiological repercussions, but what we are seeing, and I'm afraid is being ignored, is the social, economic, political, cultural, all of the other areas of life that are being impacted by this. Jobs lost, suicides increasing, domestic violence, that all impacted by what we're dealing with and the fear that's being produced by it. And so, good observation. And the other mode of transportation, and this is one of the ones that is in debate. By the way, just make a comment here. And Dr. Jesman, you're an expert here, but correct me if I'm wrong. But as of this moment, in terms of consensus on a lot of things about the coronavirus, there is no solid consensus in the medical community over much of this. There are opinions on different sides of the issue, some in the middle, but there is not a clear consensus about a lot of the coronavirus in terms of transmission, in terms of preventing and all of that. And so when people espouse that, the medical community, as if it's everybody feels one way or another, it is not a well-founded statement. And so just be aware of that if you do a little bit of research, and I'm talking just Google questions about things and see what you come up with, and you'll find quite a varied amount of opinion. And one of those is right here, and that is mode of transmission for a virus or a bacteria is whether it is airborne or not. Because one of the big discussions when this first started, we talked about social distancing, and the whole purpose in social distancing, the data is, we're told stay 6 feet apart. And I don't know if anybody's ever wondered why 6 feet. Well, the reason being, if you're 6 feet from someone and they sneeze, they cough, or they, short of them physically trying to spit on you, and even then 6 feet may be sufficient. The question becomes whether you can get transmitted the biological material carrying the virus or bacteria in order to potentially contract it. And so the question is about whether it's airborne. And if you read a lot of material and do some research, even on the CDC site, there is not clear whether the virus, the coronavirus, is actually airborne. And so that's a good thing to understand. But what we're being told or implied is that it is airborne, and that's why people think it's all around us. But when you read even the CDC information, it says that the longest that this is going to stay in the air, if it's airborne, is up to 3 hours. And that's it. Okay, based on what I know and observe and read about the virus, I don't believe that it's airborne. That's my opinion. Check it for yourself, verify it for yourself. So, if it's not airborne, that means that someone sneezes or whatever, it's going to, this thing called gravity takes over. You know, anything with any mass will be affected by gravity. The only difference in airborne versus not airborne is the size of the particulate, the virus and whatever, and the biological carrier. By the way, the coronavirus does not is a type of virus that cannot survive without having a biological carrier. It cannot just be out on its own and float around and do its thing. Okay, that has been stated pretty evidently. Again, don't believe me, check on it. But what I read, that is the case. So that means that the virus, which would be very, 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 very tiny, still has to have a biological carrier. And in terms of gravity, it causes it to be affected by gravity more than just the virus or bacteria by itself. So we talk about modes of transmission. So so first, okay, let's back up and think this through a minute. We see the math that says that of the entire population, that less than 3% of the population is currently infected. In fact, let me bring this up. It is, as of today, these are the percentages based on data from the Worldometer, that 98.1% of the world population who has had the coronavirus has recovered. So that means only 1.9% of the people haven't recovered. And 99.7% of the world's population is not infected with the virus as of today. And as of today, these are all world perspectives. The 99.6% of the active cases of coronavirus in the world are not either classified as serious or critical. And then when you look at the US numbers, they vary some. And the 98.4% of the US population who has had the coronavirus has recovered. 97% of the US population is not infected with coronavirus as of today. So that means 3% are. And that 98.5% of the active cases of coronavirus in the US are not considered serious or critical. So back to the piece of information I want you to look at. We'll look at it from a world number view. As of this moment, only 0.3% of the population is identified as having had coronavirus or being carrier for it, being that reservoir. Okay. So what has to happen is for you to get infected, this is based on chain of infection information. Again, look it up and learn from yourself. First of all, you got to encounter someone that has the virus, which is a very small percentage of the population. When you encounter them, you have to have them be close enough to you to have directly exposed you to infected biological material. And in addition, let me see. Here is the other key to this process. It's called portal of entry. If you get any virus, any bacteria on you, if it doesn't find a portal of entry, all you're going to do is wash it off. That's why there has been such an emphasis on hand washing because of this concept. And because the most likely place for you to pick up this virus, if you're not close enough to someone to get it directly through sneeze or whatever, is going to be if you find the virus on a hard surface, touch it, and pick it up. But even then, if it doesn't get a portal of entry, which portal of entries are pretty straightforward. One of them is if you have a cut or scrape or an open place in your skin, that is a portal of entry. Okay. Another one is your membranes. Your membranes are things such as your eyes, your nose, your mouth, and your ears. We have other membranes in other parts of our body, but those parts are generally protected and would have to be exposed in different ways. But by the way, if you pick up bodily fluids from someone else through other contact and they are infected, you potentially are going to pick up the virus. Okay. So you have to have encountered a small percentage of people that are carrying the virus. Secondly, you then have to be in close enough contact with them to pick up biological material. And then that biological material has to find a portal of entry into your body. So there's a lot of steps that have to occur for you to become infected. Take care, Lee. Have a good evening. And so, again, looking at chain of infection, they have to find a portal of entry, and then they have to have a host. And just because the virus or bacteria gets in your body does not mean that you will be infected. It is a greater likelihood. And what happens is if this enters your body and you become infected, then you set up a response. Your body's defense system kicks in. That's why we have fever, other things going on. And so just again, get a basic understanding of chain of infection as taught. It's not a real complicated thing to read. And it's on the Centers for Disease Control site, who are considered to be a good source, a valid source. And I would suggest that everyone check that out and learn for yourselves. All right. Another piece of information, again, all I'm trying to do is to help you get this, get perspective on what is going on around us. And another part of that perspective is that we are being led, in my opinion, that we're being led to believe that the coronavirus is something new and strange. Okay. Now, it is a unique coronavirus, but what people need to understand for perspective is we've been dealing with coronaviruses now for decades or more. And the most common coronavirus that most of us know about and have at some point in time dealt with is called the flu. The common flu that we deal with now is indeed a coronavirus. So it's not so remarkably strange that we've never seen it before. This is a new strain, and there are some people that continue to debate whether this is a man-made strain or naturally occurring. Don't know. I'm not going to go there because I'm not expert enough. But again, if you're curious, don't listen to other people's opinion on it. And that doesn't mean that you don't talk to people that are knowledgeable, but don't just make a decision based on their interpretation, their opinion, or their perspective. Evaluate that information against other sources. That's how we begin to get wisdom rather than get fear. And so that's what I'm all about with this show, is to get us all to consider. And as Ed Mario shared, when we look at this, we need to consider more than just getting sick and dying. And again, I don't mean to be insensitive, but folks, we're all going to die. That's just a fact of life. And we've been dying since the beginning of time, but we haven't, as a result, allowed ourselves to be driven by fear as much as we are now. And so really look into this, get perspective, do the research for yourself to understand, and consider what is going on. Let's see here. I want to make sure I don't miss any comments. Good information from Ad Mario about origin of the name Corona, and some other interesting insights that you might want to check out. Appreciate sharing information with us. Again, my counsel, my encouragement to you is, before you allow fear, and I'm talking about what I call pervasive fear, to drive your life, make you make decisions that might not be wise, check out information, gain knowledge, gain understanding, and then look at it from a bigger perspective. I'll give an example of my experience as this thing has unfolded, and I have more than average insight because of some of the things that I do. But when this first started, we were told that there was going to be so much death and carnage related to this, and they likened it to the Spanish flu. Nowhere close in terms of death. Okay, I think there were 50 million people died from the Spanish flu. At this point, we're talking 5 million, and the death rate is declining. Okay. Second of all, we were told that the hospitals were going to be overrun. I know that some hospitals were challenged. Believe it or not, it wasn't the big cities that were most challenged. It was actually small communities where they only have small hospitals and the like. But even then, people were able to be taken care of. Welcome, Langston. Glad to have you with us. But just when you disconnect from all of this information, mostly opinions that are being put at us and bombarding us, remove yourself from that and take time to just observe. Look around you. Okay. Look at what's going on in your world and in where you work and things like that. Doesn't mean that you don't find out information about places you can't observe firsthand, but something to consider. Okay, if you can't control it and you can't influence it, you shouldn't be trying to take it on to a point of investing a lot of emotion, investing a lot of energy, because that's futile. And so your focus should be on the things you can control and influence. And that's where you should consider. If not, you need to let go of it. I have quite a world audience, and I'm entirely grateful for that. But in terms of affecting policy in other parts of the world, I'm not going to be able to do much to do that. And so I do not, as a result, focus too much on it. Am I informed? Yes, I am very well informed, but not to a point that I am driven in my decision-making process and having fear to a level that it causes me trouble. Let's see. Oh, Sharon, welcome. I don't know if I mentioned seeing you earlier. And your comment is that in New Jersey, Sharon's from New Jersey, people have gotten crazy with fear to a point of getting crazy. And unfortunately, I observed that in places. Now, I have to say, in the area I live, which I do not go into, frankly, into Atlanta a lot for a number of reasons. But where I'm living, life looks very normal. And the people that are finding out and making an effort to not live in fear seem to be staying pretty healthy over all in all. Let's see. Okay, Rosemary, I'll let you and Ed Mario carry that on. Appreciate. By the way, I enjoy the play between people here, so thanks for that. But so back to the original process: disconnect from the news, and from that point, okay, gain understanding, gain knowledge, and begin to process it. Not people's opinions, not people's interpretation of knowledge. Gain that for yourself. And then from there, seek wisdom in it. Okay, so I know a relatively reliable fact is that 5 million people out of 7 billion died of the coronavirus. Then you have to decide, what does that matter? What can you control? What can you influence of that? And then make a plan accordingly. The other thing, I know we're running out of time, is I want you to think about this. We all do risk assessment on a daily basis. Okay. We consider whether or not we're going to get sick, get hurt, get even maybe verbally abused, whatever. We make risk assessments daily. This virus is something else that we have to take and make a risk assessment. And we need to make that risk assessment not just based on whether or not we're going to die, because we're all going to die. It's a fact. Okay. And we should not make that risk assessment purely on physical medical information, because, and when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about the body, because just like Rosemary comments here, that people die from fear. And by the way, we're seeing that culturally, and we're seeing that happen at a greater rate. And so as you look at this and you do risk assessment, by the way, I am trained in risk assessment through my military training. And so I understand the process probably more than many do. But don't just take someone else's view of the risk involved in this. Any more than, for example, the likelihood of getting hurt or dying in a car accident is a really high probability for many of us. Yet, on a daily basis, we go out and we get in our car and we drive. And I'm not saying don't do it or do it. I'm just saying it's a risk we take. We have the flu season. We've been dealing with it for years. Okay. We have a risk of getting infected with the flu. And by the way, people die from the flu. Current number I saw recently was nearly 500,000 people have died from the flu in the world. And so again, as you do risk assessment, get good information and get it, I suggest, from multiple sources. Don't base it on a news person's perspective or interpretation. And even among some people, get, for example, if you're getting medical input information, talk to multiple medical people and find out. And at the end of the day, make a risk assessment. Is this going to be a greater risk than I need to take? If so, then make adjustments based on the risk, not on fear. Use this process just to inform and avoid the fear that we're seeing today, because this, I can guarantee you, that if you live in pervasive fear, in a state of fear all the time, you will destroy your health. Okay. It may be slow, it may be fast. You will not make good decisions and judgments because of the impaired nature that fear causes on our body. So I just encourage you, please don't get imprisoned by fear. And if you take some time, gain some wisdom in regards to a lot of this, you don't have to be subject to that fear. We all deal with fear, and I'm not trying to cast aspersions, people that have fears, but let's not have pervasive, unhealthy fear that, as I suggest in the title of the podcast, puts us in a prison, mental, emotional, and even now with all the quarantining and hiding out and staying away from people. That's to me, I could be wrong in this, but that's a form of prison. And I believe that we are all needful of those interactions. And the more that we let fear drive us away from human interactions, the unhealthier it is. Okay. Ed Mario talks about the fact that the estimate of infected and dead directly contributes to impact on health systems. And yes, you're right. It does affect a number of things, certainly. But I go back to my original comment. Death is part of life, and we've been dealing with it without all the fear that we currently have. So we're out of time, and out of respect for you and your time, I want to wrap it up. Thank you for being here. And I hope, if nothing else, I've challenged you in ways that to help you not have to live in a fear prison and experience the negative byproduct of that by sharing, hopefully, a little wisdom. Others have shared some insights as well. Thank you for that. And I will be back with the Wisdom Seeker Live on Monday morning. And for those of you from other time zones, I am going to look at considering a timing about like this as well, because I really enjoy having the engagement with connections from other people as well. And especially my friend Rosemary, we miss you. Everybody on the Monday morning time still think about you. And so glad to see you again. So God bless you. I pray for you that you gain wisdom, and that through that wisdom that you can have courage and not fear. So take care, everyone. Thanks for giving me your time, and we'll see you on another episode of the Wisdom Seeker Live podcast. Take care.